to come back to something that came up yesterday about self-grasping ignorance and self-centered thought. His Holiness says that you generate the two separately because, the antidotes to the two separately. Oops. Great compassion and bodhicitta is the antidote to self-centeredness, and the wisdom realizing emptiness is the antidote to self-grasping. And some people say, well, wouldn't realizing the emptiness of an inherently existent self, shouldn't that be enough to help us overcome self-centeredness? Just seeing that there's no self there that's inherently existent, shouldn't that do the job already? And His Holiness says no, that compassion has to be cultivated separately. Yeah. Then somebody might say, well, in Nagarjuna's essay or commentary on Bodhicitta, he talks about the wisdom realizing emptiness, and then at the end, after doing this, says, and of course, anybody who has this realization would, have bodhicitta. So His Holiness clarifies that is in the case of sharp faculty disciples, not just everybody. And in addition, these sharp faculty disciples are ones that have previously heard about bodhicitta, so there's that seed planted in their mind, so that then when they realize emptiness, the compassion that will lead them to generate bodhicitta will arise in their mind. Okay? But that's only for sharp faculty, and it also requires that they've heard about bodhicitta and great compassion beforehand. Okay? For the modest faculty disciples, and those who haven't heard about bodhicitta before realizing emptiness directly, then compassion and bodhicitta have to be developed on their own through one of the two methods. One method is the 7-point instruction on cause and effect. That's where we have seeing all sentient beings as your mother and so on. And then the second method is this one from Shantideva, which is equalizing and exchanging self for others. But you can see in Shantideva's method how much he brings in the wisdom aspect, that helps us to cut through the self-centeredness. Okay? And when you do that, then you can see why, it would be possible to cut through the self-centeredness without realizing emptiness, but it wouldn't be as powerful and it wouldn't be as profound as, going through this method where we're really looking at, what is the nature of this I that we think is so important. And we find that it has no inherent nature. So much more forceful here. Also, when you generate bodhicitta, although there's a measure of having generated bodhicitta and entering the bodhisattva path, it's not like you generate bodhicitta and, okay, now I got it, and your bodhicitta never changes and it never advances and everything like that. But rather, you enter the bodhisattva path, and then as you're progressing on the bodhisattva path and getting a clearer and clearer understanding of emptiness, then your bodhicitta also changes as a result of that. So in Maitreya's text, The Ornament of Clear Realization, he talks about 22 kinds of bodhicitta in accordance with, how it advances along and develops as you go through the bodhisattva paths and grounds. Okay? So this kind of thing I think is important because often we think of, all these things like a light switch. You either have it or you don't. But, most of these things, they develop over time gradually. And then even after you fulfill the measure of having it, you still continue to develop it. Yeah? And bodhisattvas certainly continue to meditate on compassion and generate bodhicitta again and again. It's not like they say, okay, got that down. What's next? It's something that's always in their mind. And it motivates everything they do. Okay. So again, before we get into Shantideva, I left off yesterday. We had talked extensively about the disadvantages of self-centeredness, and how important it is to see those disadvantages and then think of self-centeredness out there, that it's not who we are, So when we see the disadvantages, we point at the self-centeredness and we say, oh, why do I have this problem? It's your fault. Okay, we don't point at ourselves and say, oh, I'm so selfish, blame myself, beat, beat, beat. It's, why did I do that destructive action? I was under the influence of self-centeredness. Self-centeredness, he's the terrorist. That's the terrorist, the thief. They used to say thief. We don't mind. We don't think of thieves as so bad. Terrorist, Yeah? Terrorist. I mean, self-centeredness terrorizes us. Thief, I think, is too modest. Yeah? Yeah? But, definitely terrorizes us. And makes us terrorize others, So to really being able to do that. And in fact, there's a certain method for overcoming the self-centeredness, where when we experience pain, suffering, disappointment, disillusionment, anything that we usually don't like or like to gripe about, to say, well, why am I experiencing this unpleasantness, this suffering? Well, it's because of my own destructive actions. Well, what lay behind my destructive actions? My self-centeredness. We never commit destructive actions, negative karma, for the benefit of others, do we? Yeah. Can you think of one, destructive action you did that was for the benefit of others? Yeah. I think I'll kill somebody for the benefit of others. Right. Yeah. It's never for the benefit of others. It's always, out of self-centeredness. And so that's what creates the karma whereby we experience, misery in our lives. So when we're having a miserable situation, when we're going through it, instead of feeling sorry for ourselves, instead of blaming somebody else, point the finger at the self-centeredness and say, it's your fault. You're the one who made me create the negative action. That is the cause of what I'm going through right now. Okay? It's a very effective technique if we remember to do it. Our problem is that in the situation, we often don't remember the antidotes. And we just go back to our old habits. So this is why Dharma friends are very important, because they're the ones that tap us on the shoulder and say, remember the antidote, try thinking this way. Okay? So I'll tell you about one time in which I actually remembered to do this one. Usually it's like, drive by, Other people have drive-by shootings. I have drive-by antidotes. They're gone. I can't grasp them. So Yeah, this was the one I think somebody was referring to earlier when I was on pilgrimage in Tibet. This was in 1986. 86, 87. When were the riots? They were 87, weren't they? Anyway, so, yeah, 87. So, we were on pilgrimage going to Lamo Lao, which is this lake where when they want to find the next incarnation of the Dalai Lama, they go there and they look in it and they can see syllables and houses and clues that will lead them to find the child. So we were going by horseback to get there. And there was a small group of us, I don't know, maybe 6, 7 people. And I was riding this very sweet horse, okay, very cooperative horse. And this one monk, a Western monk, was riding a very uncooperative horse. And his horse liked to stop right in the middle of a stream. And just stop. And he was sitting there like, come on, let's cross the stream. And the horse is just, well, I'll do it when I feel like it. So he was getting quite distressed. This had happened a number of times, and he was, getting distressed and upset. And so I volunteered to change horses with him. And at that, he totally blew up at me. Completely blew up. He took out his whole list of everything I had done that he didn't like and everything he hated about me that he had been compiling clearly for a number of years because the things he said dated from like 10 years back, from 10 years, on. And he let me have it. And as you did this and you did that, and then so-and-so told me you did this, and so-and-so told me that, and I think it was the blessing of being on pilgrimage, I remembered, give the pain to the self-centeredness. Give the pain to the self-centeredness. So I said to myself, he's criticizing my self-centered thought. Because everything I did that he didn't like, true or not true, whatever, it was due to self-centeredness. So I just imagined, all that criticism going to my self-centered thought and it getting really trampled on and beat up because he wasn't gentle. He was really, laying it on. And as a result of doing that, usually I hate criticism, I crumble under it. But I did this, I was completely okay afterwards. We kept on. He didn't want to change horses, so I said, okay. We kept on. We all got to our camping site for the night. My mind was completely peaceful. I couldn't believe it. Yeah? So, what do they say? The proof is in the pudding? So, this is a technique that actually, if you remember to do it, it works. Mm-hmm. Okay, so trying to give the pain to the self-centeredness, give the disadvantages to the self-centeredness. Yeah, give the blame. All that criticism, it goes to the self-centeredness. Yeah, and then we generate the thought that wants to help others. And what enables us to do that? Well, one factor in it is to think of the advantages of cherishing others. Okay? You'll see all throughout the Lamrim, they talk about the disadvantages and the advantages. They knew the marketing technique. Yeah. And it works. When you hear the disadvantages of self-centeredness, you don't want to go anywhere near it. When you hear the benefits that come from cherishing others, then the mind is more interested in it. Okay, so what do you think are some of the benefits of cherishing other living beings? People will like you. Okay, well, there's a little bit of 8 worldly concerns mixed in.
No, what I mean is they want to be around you.
Yeah. And the benefit of that is if people like you and want to be around you, then you have the opportunity to share the Dharma with them. So being a likable person, bodhisattvas want to be likable people, not because then they can, other people praise them and respect them and send them Christmas cards and gifts and things, but because when people like you, it gives you the opportunity to share the Dharma with them. Okay? That's one advantage. What are other? Yeah.
Your interactions with others will tend to go smoother and your mind will be calmer.
Yeah, your interactions with others are going better and your mind is calmer because we're not thinking me all the time.
There's no regret because you always come from your heart. There's no regret.
Yes. So you're acting from your heart and you don't regret your actions.
Whatever the outcome is.
Yeah.
There's no regret.
Right, because you acted with a good motivation. So whether the person likes what you did or doesn't like what you did, you have no regret because you acted from a good place.
When you do this, you're sowing seeds of familiarity of being generous.
Yeah.
And it becomes easier.
Right, so you're sowing the seeds of it and, like the knapweed we pick here, the more seeds there are in the ground, the more knapweed you get. So the more, we think of this, the more we're putting the seeds of cherishing others into our own minds. Yeah? And the easier it gets.
Do you think you would approach people with less fear and suspicion?
Definitely, yeah, because you're intent on benefiting them, so you see their goodness, you remember their kindness, so you don't approach them with fear and suspicion. What are they going to do to me? Yeah?
The energy that you're putting out, they're actually, if they even have something up their sleeves, because of the energy, the pure energy that you're putting out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because your mind is peaceful, calm, welcoming, even if they have something up their sleeve. They're going to find your openness disarming. Yeah.
So then in any situation you can be calm and happy. It doesn't matter what's happening.
Yeah, doesn't matter what's happening around you. All hell could be breaking loose, but your own mind is calm.
I think it's a much better motivation than other things such as obligation or responsibility or, you owe it to somebody. If you have the compassion for everyone, then you're motivated that you've got to do something.
Yeah. So it really motivates us to do something, but it's a motivation that's coming from the heart. It's not, I've got to do it out of obligation, or it's not a responsibility that somebody else gave us that we didn't want. It's a responsibility that we voluntarily took. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Purifies our negative actions towards living beings.
Ye-
And also we build connections with them.
Yeah, so this is a very important point, that bodhicitta is extremely strong for purifying negative karma, because bodhicitta is not the same as cherishing others. Cherishing others is a precondition for bodhicitta. But once you have the bodhicitta, because your mind is working for the benefit of all sentient beings, everything you do is creating tremendous merit. And, everything you do is a very forceful, powerful purification of negative karma. Shantideva explains this in the first chapter of this text. Yeah. So if you want to have powerful purification, generate bodhicitta. Yeah. and then do your Vajrasattva or whatever.
It softens the mind, it makes it more receptive to actually having deeper understandings of the Dharma over the long term. It like fertilizes things.
Yeah, it fertilizes the mind, makes it more receptive. We aren't so resistant. It links back to what Cheryl said about you're not, on your guard all the time and looking for what people are going to do towards you. Your mind's more relaxed and open, so the Dharma goes in much easier. Hmm?
It's a good basis. It's the best basis for genuine self-confidence.
Yeah, it's a very good basis for genuine self-confidence. Yeah. Whereas thinking, how good-looking we are, how smart we are, how talented we are, how popular we are, how many people praise us, how many newspaper articles they wrote about us. That's not a very good basis for self-confidence.
I just want to add the connection part. We build connections with them, not just for this life that we can share the Dharma, but also for next.
Yeah, so we're building a lot of connections with sentient beings when we cherish them. And these connections are important for future lives when we are actually bodhisattvas and can be of great benefit to others. We want to have as many connections with sentient beings as we possibly can. If you don't have those connections, you might be a bodhisattva, but you don't have a lot of people around you to benefit. And this reminds me, of one of my teachers, Sangha Rinpoche. When he was in Los Angeles, we took him to the Santa Monica beach, and there were all these sea anemones, and he would take his mala and put it in their mouths, and their mouths would start to close. He'd pull it out before they grabbed it. But he was making virtuous connections with all these sentient beings who in future lives would, at some time or another, would be human beings and who he would be able to teach the Dharma to. Yeah? Okay. Other benefits, Bodhichitta. Yeah?
We feel satisfied and our life has meaning.
Yeah, our life has meaning. At the end of the day, we feel satisfied. Yeah? It's like, that's good. And then that's the kind of satisfaction that brings real self-confidence.
I just keep thinking about how just exhausting being self-centered is. I've just been struck with that the last few days, just thinking about it. Just, putting your energy into so much self-centered thought. And no wonder I'm exhausted all the time.
Yeah.
Not because I'm out doing wonderful things for people. By the way, it's pretty easy when you think about it. Like you somebody needs something, you go and do something for them. It's just mentally exhausting.
Yes, very true. Self-centeredness is totally mentally exhausting, because it's always thinking, conniving, how can I get the most pleasure out of whatever small thing it is we're doing? And it's very fatiguing.
Yeah, people in all faiths are always asking, what's my purpose in life?
Mm-hmm.
And this gives you a real excellent sense of purpose for your life.
Yep.
For your entire life.
Yeah.
Future life.
Yeah. I mean, what could be more beneficial than attaining full awakening for the benefit of sentient beings? Can you find anything that is more meaningful to do? Yeah. Then when people say, what are you doing? We don't have to say, I'm making plastic. People of my generation understand the joke. Do you understand the joke? You remember it? Okay.
His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, one sleeps better and has better health.
Yes, you sleep better and you have better health. Okay, so this relates to His Holiness's comment, if you want to be selfish, be wisely selfish and cherish others. Because you'll sleep better, your health will be better, you won't have so many problems. Yeah. Because you see, so many of our problems with other people is because we're just thinking about ourselves all the time. Yeah? So boy, imagine not having so many problems with other people. Or imagine, even if people have problems with you, since you've acted with a clear conscience, you don't get all bummed out about it. Mm-hmm.
Is it easier to practice the 6 perfections, generosity and self-centeredness?
Yeah, so it makes it much easier to practice the 6 perfections. Yeah, and do the whole Bodhisattva practice. Yeah.
It creates harmony in the community.
Yes, very big for harmony in the community. You can see this so clearly, you know, when somebody's not in harmony in the community, yeah, there's some self-centeredness going on, you know, because we're putting ourselves above others. There's this very beautiful sutra in the Pali Canon where the Buddha's visiting some monks who had just been doing the rains retreat, and he asked them how it was, and they said it was so beneficial. It was, you know, very nice. And he said, "Were you harmonious?" And they said, "Oh yes, we were completely harmonious. That's what made it so nice." And the Buddha said, "Well, what made you harmonious?" And then they started saying, you know, "Well, when I saw this needed to be done, I did it. And when I saw that needed to be done, I did it. And when I saw my fellow monastics, I thought of their good qualities. And when I thought of, you know, kind of their practice and their good qualities, then of course I wanted to do things for them, and that's what created harmony." I mean, Anuruddha put it much more poetically than I did.
There's something about if somebody goes out on alms, I make sure that if I'm home, I'm the one who prepares the table and washes the dishes and makes sure everything's ready
So when they come home, there's there. Right, and then after everybody eats, then I refill the water and I clean the dishes and, yeah.
And he also said if they want to do something and it will make them happy, then I will do that too. Something like that.
Yeah, that if somebody else wanted to do something, you know, then if it's something they saw was virtuous, they just went along with it. Yeah. So they didn't put up like a counter thing that, you know, they might prefer more.
I was thinking about how we had some discussions about how we hang on to identities. I was thinking how self-cherishing is a lot about sometimes like
Self-centeredness, you mean.
Self-centeredness.
You want to cherish yourself. You're valuable.
That so much of that is about my identity, my group and stuff.
Yes.
And if we're really cherishing others, then I think that would get us out of that because we're cherishing all others. And we're not saying, I'm going to cherish you because you look like this or you act like that. Yeah. So I think that would
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely pulls us out of our own trip. Yeah. Self-centeredness, cherishing others pulls us out of our own trip. And it pulls us out of, because part of what's our trip is grasping to our identities. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Create lots of merit for a good rebirth.
And it actually delivers the goods that self-centeredness promises, which is a lasting source of happiness.
Yeah, so self-centeredness is full of false promises. Cherishing others actually accomplishes what self-centeredness said it was going to do, but it can't do. Yeah.
When you give rise to happiness in others, it's going to give rise to happiness in you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Okay, so remember all of those. Because when you meditate on the advantages of cherishing others, you want to be able to call those to mind, one after the other, and think of specific situations in which you can, cherish others and accrue those kind of benefits. Okay? So it's not selfish to want to accrue the benefits of cherishing others. Sometimes we go way overboard on this selfish bit, and we think, for example, that desiring Buddhahood is selfish, or desiring to realize emptiness is selfish, or wanting to have the benefits of cherishing others is selfish. None of that stuff is selfish, because what you're doing is something that is purifying your own mind and bringing you closer to Dharma realizations. It's not selfish. So don't think that any desire or any aspiration is selfish. You have to discriminate between the desires that are virtuous aspirations and the desires that have to go with the 8 worldly concerns, or, grasping some other kind of worldly benefit. Very important to distinguish these. Otherwise we think, I don't cherish myself. All desire is negative. So I'm neutral. I'm a bump on the log. Because if I have any aspiration, that's selfish. So I just sit here. Is that virtuous? No. Okay, so don't get confused. Okay, let's see what Shantideva has to say. Are you ready? Are you prepared? So, 113. Having seen the mistakes in cherishing myself and the ocean of good in cherishing others, I shall completely reject all selfishness and accustom myself to accepting others. Okay, so that's the conclusion. You meditate deeply, disadvantages of self-centeredness, benefits of cherishing others, and that's your conclusion. I'm rejecting this self-centered mind, and I'm accepting and cherishing others. 114, okay? So how am I going to think when I do this? In the same way as the hands and so forth are regarded as limbs of the body, likewise, why are embodied creatures not regarded as limbs of life? So I am going to regard every single sentient being as a limb of life, just as the hands, the feet, everything are part of the body. And so going back to the previous example, how the hand helps the foot, then we help other sentient beings because we're part of the same, big organism of life. Okay. Now 115. Through acquaintance has the thought of I arisen towards this impersonal body. Okay, we talked about this before. Why is this body impersonal? There's nothing me or mine about this body. Whatever I look at, I can look at every single part of this body, and I'm not going to find anything that is me in it. The genes come from my parents. Everything else comes from the food, which came from the farmers. Okay? So it's only through the force of acquaintance. This is mind-blowing. Only through the force of acquaintance that the thought I has arisen in regards to this body, which when we look and analyze, there is nothing I or mine about this body. Okay? So in a similar manner, why should it, the concept of I, not arise towards other living beings? If it's only through familiarity that I think I, based on this body and my mental aggregates, why can't I think I based on other bodies and other mental aggregates? Because they're all the same in just being a collection of aggregates. Yeah? So do you see how he's going to direct us into exchanging self and others, so that instead of labeling these aggregates I and all the junk that comes along with saying I and mine, to look at others' collection of aggregates and label I. And then if you want to be selfish about their aggregates. And work for the benefit of those other sentient beings who are now I. Do you see? Yeah? It's really rather skillful. So 116, when I work in this way for the sake of others, I should not let conceit or the feeling that I am wonderful arise. Ah, shucks. Yeah. It would be so nice, as we're conquering the self-centeredness, to be able to go, look at me, I'm such a benevolent person. I cherish others so much. Don't you want to write about me in the newspaper? Yeah. Or I'm so good, I'm a better bodhisattva than others, because I am so magnanimous, I am so benevolent, And look, I have this whole collection of thank you notes from sentient beings attesting to what a wonderful bodhisattva I am. Okay. What does Shantideva say to that attitude? He says, it is just like feeding myself. I hope for nothing in return. Yeah, when you feed yourself, you don't go, what a wonderful person I am for eating dinner. I fed myself. How magnanimous, how generous I was. Because remember, now I means others. So it's just like feeding yourself. It's not a big deal. I fed myself is code for I fed everybody else who is now I. So what am I being so conceited about? I'm just feeding myself. Okay. 117. Therefore, just as I protect myself from unpleasant things, however slight, in the same way I should habituate myself to have a compassionate and caring mind towards others. Yeah? So boy, we protect ourselves from the tiniest inconvenience, don't we? Tiniest thing we don't like. Yeah? We make sure we protect ourselves. Yeah. We see somebody coming out of the kitchen after the meal, and we can tell they're looking for another volunteer for the dishes. And we just have to go pee-pee very badly, so we leave the room. Yeah. Because nothing inconvenient for me, sorry.
Only for specific monastics.
And when somebody asks you to take a box of cups back somewhere else, your back hurts. And it's, you can't lift the box. Yeah, because if you try lifting it, you will strain your back, and then you'll drop the box and all the cups will break. So sorry.
I'll bring it back.
Okay. Okay. Okay, now who's taking the box to Seattle? Oh, we have 2 volunteers. Fantastic. Okay. Okay, you have Spokane. Okay, you'll help with Spokane. Good. Okay. Okay. Marga, where do you live?
Is this the real reason for this retreat?
And Tanner, you have a car to go to, yeah? No, to, Moscow.
I don't live in Moscow, but I would love to do it.
Okay. I thought you lived in Moscow.
No, I live in Coeur d'Alene now.
Oh,
I
okay.
just graduated, yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, congratulations. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so,
Maybe you can get Jay when he's up. If he's
yeah, we got to get him up here again. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, yes, I see some people looking down. Like, I hope she didn't read my she didn't read my application. She doesn't know where I'm from. Oklahoma.
Canadian background.
Oh, there's some Canadians. Oh. Okay. Okay. So.
It's got 4 wheels at least.
Yeah.
With 4 cases.
Okay, so so he says, therefore, just as I protect myself from unpleasant things, however slight, in the same way I should habituate myself to have a compassionate and caring mind towards others. Makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah, we've exchanged self and others. There's nothing me about this. Why do I protect it so much? There's me about other beings, so protect them. 118, it is out of his great compassion that the Lord Avalokiteshvara has even blessed his name to dispel the nervousness of being among other people. So I think Chenrezig at some time, do any of the footnotes in any of your books have an expanded story about this? Anything? He must have blessed his name for somebody who is anxious about public speaking or anxious about going in front of others, then he, yeah.
Short thing, it just says, he said, by recollecting my name 3 times, may the fear of being embarrassed among people be dispelled.
Okay. Yeah, so that was one of Chenrezig's unshakable resolutions. Yeah, fear and embarrassment, right? Yeah.
He's describing what's now called agoraphobia.
Agoraphobia.
Yeah, it's a fear of being in
Agoraphobia, yeah, fear of being in crowds, right? Yeah. Okay. Then 119, I should not turn away from what is difficult, for by the power of familiarity, I may be made unhappy even when someone whose name once frightened me is not around. Okay, so let's start at the end of the verse. You know how when there's somebody who you really don't like who harmed you in the past, even that person is nowhere near where you are, when you hear their name, you get frightened, you get anxious. Okay? So why does that happen? The person's not there. We hear their name. Why that happens is because of familiarity. You know, just through familiarity with the thought of this person has harmed me. And we think that enough so that we just even hear their name and we freak out. Okay, you can see this, can't you? It sounds strange, but we do it all the time. Yeah, you're going somewhere and then you're hearing that somebody else is also going to be there. That person's nowhere around. Immediately you get tense. So this happens a lot. Okay, why it happens? Familiarity. So what he's saying here is use the power of familiarity to your advantage, and by not turning away from what is difficult, you will get familiar with doing things that are difficult so that they become not difficult. Yeah? And an earlier verse in this text, he says there's nothing that does not become easier through familiarity. Yeah? And so even if something's hard, we try it, we do the best we can, we rejoice in it. Next time we try it again, do the best we can, we keep familiarizing ourselves. If we don't try, if we just throw up our hands and say, it's too hard, I'm too stupid, this is impossible, then for sure you're never going to make any progress. Yeah? But if we say, it's difficult, I'll do what I can, then you're putting those seeds in the mind. This whole process of planting seeds is very important. Okay? And I say this because we have the expectation that we should be able to master and be perfect at something immediately. Yeah? Maybe because we've been pressured a lot when we're kids to, be high achievers, whatever it is. We have this expectation of, I'm going to be left behind if I'm not good at doing this. So I got to be good right away. Yeah, this whole competitive thing that we're inculcated with as kids. And that, for many people, that makes them just say, look, I don't want to compete because I'm not going to come out on top, so I'm not even going to try. Yeah? Don't think about that way in terms of the Dharma. Yeah, the Dharma is totally different than worldly life. You do not have to prove yourself to anybody in the Dharma. You don't have to. We're not having a contest of who can become a bodhisattva first. Okay? So you just do everything and give it a try and keep giving it a try. And that's how eventually you're able to master things. Yeah. It's interesting, like why in our culture do we feel we have to be good at something from the very beginning? We have to receive some praise or recognition. It's self-centered.
No, we start out sinners. As sinners.
We start out as sinners. So we somehow have to atone. Yeah. Or sometimes, this is why mom and dad care about us. Because we perform well. Yeah, that's how you earn love. Yeah, there could be many other things.
Ben, well, you wouldn't know about this because you don't watch television, but everything has turned into a competition now. Even remodeling houses and losing weight and everything is and cooking, everything is a competition now. Trying to be the best.
Yeah.
That's what as a nurse, You know, I don't want to be in the midst of it. I want to heal. I do want to do those things. But I'm not about the money. I don't want to be a part of the competition anymore.
Yeah. Then you do what you do with a happy mind.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
It's interesting as Shanti Deva is talking about this, because one of the things that we're just learning in teaching is even kindergartners are coming in saying that they know things. Like I know this and I'm good at that. And they're saying it's being risk averse, not wanting to take the risk.
Mm.
And more we're seeing this in the students.
Yeah.
That they already know.
Right.
Because of the fear of the risk.
Yeah. The fear of failing.
Failing.
Yeah.
This in kindergartners.
Yeah. That's bad news when it happens in kindergarten, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is very much cultural, because I lived in Japan for many years, and it was a huge culture shock when I went, because you do things very much as a group, and you don't stand down. And it was really difficult at first, and I kind of rebelled against it quite a lot. And then eventually, there was something quite nice about noticing that everybody's watching each other's needs. Even when you go out to eat, it's quite rude, especially if you're with teachers, professors, or whoever, for them to have to feed themselves. Everybody kind of feeds everybody else and pours their drinks, especially teachers or people who have in that kind of role. And when I moved from Japan to the States, and that was another huge culture shock there, having to be in as a competitive individual, which I just wasn't very good at. So it's so interesting having that bicultural
Yeah.
perspective.
Very much. Okay. We did 119, huh? Okay. So, to whoever wishes to quickly afford protection to both the self and other beings, should practice the holy secret, the exchanging of self for others. Okay? So that's his conclusion, and that's also what he's leading us into, which we will talk about tomorrow. Okay. Now, we have 2 extra minutes to generate aspiring bodhicitta. Okay. So what aspiring bodhicitta is all about is His Holiness does this all the time. I mean, like almost every I would say every public teaching he gives, that's been going on for a few days, he does aspiring bodhicitta, because what you're doing is simply generating bodhicitta, in the presence of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and just rejoicing that you're generating bodhicitta. So there's 3 verses that, I'll recite line by line, and you recite afterwards. I'll go slowly enough so you don't need to read it. You can think about the meaning instead. And the first verse is taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, because that's the basis for then following, generating bodhicitta. The second verse is actually taking bodhicitta, or generating bodhicitta, I should say, saying that, I'm going to generate all these good qualities for the welfare of all living beings. And then the third verse is a dedication. And this, the dedication is His Holiness's favorite verse, the one for as long as space endures and as long as sentient beings remain. Okay, so we will do that. So kneel down. Yeah. And then think of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in front of you, especially Medicine Buddha. And think of Shantideva in front of you. And it's also His Holiness's birthday, so think of him in front of you too. And then we're generating this aspiration in their presence, because this is what they feel, and it's especially our offering to His Holiness on his birthday. So then you can repeat. We'll go through the whole thing once, and then a second time and a third time. With the wish to free all sentient beings,
with the wish to free all sentient beings,
I take up refuge at all times in the Buddha's Dharma and Sangha until attainment of full awakening. Today, in the presence of the awakened ones, inspired by compassion, wisdom, and joyous effort, I generate the mind aspiring for full Buddhahood, for the well-being of all sentient beings. For as long as space endures, and as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too abide, to dispel the misery of the world. Okay, it's the first repetition. With the wish to free all sentient beings, I take refuge at all times in the Buddha's Dharma and Sangha until the attainment of full awakening. Today, in the presence of the awakened ones, inspired by compassion, wisdom, and joyous effort, I generate the mind aspiring for full Buddhahood, for the well-being of all sentient beings. For as long as space endures, and as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too abide, to dispel the misery of the world. Okay. And then with the third repetition, really imagine all sentient beings around you, and that you're leading them in saying this. With a wish to free all sentient beings, I take refuge at all times in the Buddha's Dharma and Sangha until attainment of full awakening. Today, in the presence of the awakened ones, inspired by compassion, wisdom, and joyous effort, I generate the mind aspiring for full Buddhahood, for the well-being of all sentient beings. For as long as space endures, and as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too abide, to dispel the misery of the world.